Linda was 32, a kind-hearted nurse working at a small hospital just outside the city. Her husband, Brian, 33, was a sales executive who often traveled for work. Together, they lived in a cozy apartment on the edge of town. Quiet, filled with books, framed photos, and the scent of fresh coffee every morning. Linda trusted Brian completely. She admired how calm and responsible he was, how he always kissed her goodbye before every trip. When friends said, "Linda, you're so lucky. Brian is every woman's dream," she would smile and nod. They had no children yet, but they talked about it often. A little boy, maybe, or a girl with Brian's smile. Their life seemed perfect, simple, and full of love. Until one night, when the phone rang after midnight, and a trembling voice on the other end shattered everything she thought she knew. 4 years, Linda and Brian lived what looked like a perfect life. They shared quiet breakfasts by the window, laughed over burnt toast, and argued playfully about which movie to watch on Friday nights. On weekends, they took walks in the park, holding hands like newlyweds. When Brian was away on business trips, he always sent short, sweet messages. "Miss you already. Can't wait to be home." And every time, Linda smiled at her phone, feeling loved and safe. She kept a small journal where she wrote about their days together, the blue shirt he left hanging on the chair, the nights they stayed up eating ice cream, the way he said, "You're my home, Linda." To her, that sentence meant everything. Home wasn't a place, it was him. She believed she understood love, simple, loyal, unshakable. "We were happy," she would later write. "Or at least, I thought we were." Their home was filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of Brian's favorite coffee blend. Linda often told her co-workers, "I'm lucky. Brian takes care of me so well." And she meant it, every word. But happiness is fragile. It can disappear with a single sound. That sound came one night, when the clock struck midnight and the phone began to ring. Linda reached for it, sleepy and confused, never knowing that the voice waiting on the other end would change her life forever. It was just past midnight when the phone began to ring. Linda stirred in bed, half asleep. Beside her, Brian was snoring softly, his arm draped over the blanket. She frowned, reached for the phone, and answered in a whisper, "Hello." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a trembling female voice spoke. "Brian, our son Davis has a fever. We need to go to the hospital." Linda froze. The words echoed in her mind, twisting into confusion. "I think you have the wrong number," she said softly. "Who is this?" The woman hesitated, then replied, "This is Adeline, his wife." The phone slipped from Linda's hand and hit the floor. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear herself breathe. She turned to Brian, shaking him awake. "Brian, wake up. Who is Adeline? Who is Davis?" Brian's eyes flew open, confusion flashing before panic set in. He stared at her, speechless, his face drained of color. "Answer me." Linda's voice cracked. "Who is she?" There was a long pause. Then, in a low, trembling voice, he said, "Linda, I'm sorry." The room seemed to spin. Brian buried his face in his hands. "I never wanted to hurt you. It started years ago, before we met. When Adeline and I separated, she was already pregnant. I thought it was over. But then, when she needed help, I couldn't walk away." Linda's voice shook. "You've been lying to me for years?" He nodded weakly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just couldn't choose." Tears welled in her eyes. "You didn't choose, Brian. You lied." She stepped back, staring at the man she thought she knew, the man she'd trusted with her whole heart. In that moment, their life together unraveled. Every dinner, every miss you, every smile, now felt like a carefully built illusion. Brian whispered, "Please, Linda. I'll fix this." But she turned away. Her voice was cold, broken, final. "No, Brian. Some things you can't fix. You built this house on lies." And for the first time in years, the silence between them was louder than love itself. The morning came quietly, almost cruelly calm. The sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting the room in gold, the same room that once felt warm and safe, now empty and cold. Linda moved slowly, methodically, packing her clothes into a small suitcase. She didn't cry. Not anymore. Her heart had already shattered the night before, leaving only quiet resolve. Brian sat on the edge of the bed, his face pale, eyes red from sleeplessness. "Linda, please," he whispered, reaching for her hand. "Don't leave me. I'll fix this. I'll end it with Adeline. I'll make everything right. I love you." She stopped, turned to him, and looked straight into his eyes, the eyes she once trusted more than anything. "Go to your son," she said softly. "He needs you more than I do." Brian shook his head desperately. "No, I can't lose you too." "You already did," she replied, her voice calm, but heavy with pain. She zipped her suitcase, picked it up, and walked toward the door. Brian followed her, his voice trembling. "Please, Linda. Don't throw us away. We can start again." She paused at the doorway. The morning light touched her face, revealing the tears she had been holding back. "Brian," she said quietly, "I didn't throw anything away. You did. Every time you lied, every time you walked into another home pretending it was yours, you tore us apart." The silence that followed was unbearable. Brian dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I made a mistake. Please forgive me." Linda stood still for a moment, breathing deeply, her eyes glistening. Then, with the faintest tremor in her voice, she said, "Sometimes, forgiveness isn't love. Sometimes it's letting go." And with that, she opened the door. The cool morning air rushed in, filling the room with a strange finality. She stepped out, the sound of her heels fading down the hallway. When the door closed behind her, it wasn't just the sound of wood meeting frame, it was the sound of a life ending. The apartment felt too big without him. Every corner carried a memory. His laughter in the kitchen, his jacket on the chair, his toothbrush beside hers. Now, only silence remained. Linda moved through her days like a shadow. She went to work, came home, ate alone. Some nights she cried until dawn. Other nights, she simply sat in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. She had never realized how heavy silence could be, how it pressed against the walls, how it filled her lungs when she tried to breathe. Her friends called, worried, but she rarely answered. What could she say? That the man she trusted had lived a lie? That her marriage had been nothing more than a beautifully wrapped illusion? Weeks passed. One evening, after another long day at the hospital, Linda sat at her desk and opened her old journal. The last page she had written was months ago, a list of things she loved about Brian. She stared at it for a long time, then slowly turned to a new page. Her pen trembled at first, but then she began to write. "He destroyed the world I lived in, but maybe I can build a better one." When she finished, she closed the book and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered like scattered stars, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel small. The pain was still there, yes, but it was quieter now, replaced by something steadier. Resolve. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I'm still here, and that means I can begin again." 6 months later, the divorce papers arrived in a plain white envelope. No drama. No tears. Just a quiet ending to a love that once felt unbreakable. Linda signed her name, her hand steady. For the first time, she didn't feel broken, only free. She moved into a smaller apartment near the hospital where she now worked full-time. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom space with peeling paint and a single window that looked out onto the busy street, but it was hers. Every corner, every cup, every sound belonged to her alone. Her days became long but meaningful. She threw herself into her work, caring for patients with a gentleness born from her own pain. When people asked why she always smiled, she'd simply say, "Because I know how much a kind word can matter." She started jogging in the mornings, cooking dinner for one, and reading before bed. Slowly, the rhythm of life returned, quieter, steadier, and hers to shape. Of course, there were moments when memories resurfaced. His laughter, their shared plans, the nights she thought they were forever. But instead of letting the memories hurt, she let them remind her of how far she'd come. One rainy afternoon, on her way home from work, she saw him. Brian. He was across the street, holding the hand of a small boy, Davis. The boy giggled as they shared an umbrella, Brian bending down to wipe water from his son's face. Linda froze. For a moment, everything around her disappeared. The cars, the rain, the people. It was just them. The life that could have been, and the life that was. Then, something unexpected happened. She smiled. Not a bitter smile, not one of regret, but of acceptance. She whispered to herself. Some stories don't end with revenge. Some end with peace. And as the light turned green, Linda crossed the street, head high, the rain washing away what little pain remained. She didn't look back. Because she finally understood, healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about learning to walk forward with grace. Linda's life looks very different now. The silence that once haunted her has become her peace. She wakes early, makes her own coffee, and waters the small plants on her balcony before heading to the hospital. Her days are full, not of love stories or promises, but of purpose. She reads to elderly patients, volunteers at the children's ward, and paints on weekends just to feel color again. When people ask if she still believes in love, she smiles softly. Yes, she says. But I've learned, love without honesty is just an illusion. Sometimes at night, she sits by the window, watching the city lights. She no longer thinks about Brian or the past. Instead, she thinks about how she survived, how she turned heartbreak into strength. Her reflection in the glass is calm, almost new. She whispers, sometimes, losing someone isn't the end. It's the beginning of finding yourself. Her story is not one of bitterness, but of rebirth. Because when the truth shattered her world, she built a new one that no lie could ever break again.